the school of the undefeated of the East, the winds of the king, Zenshin, Keiretsu, Tenpa Kyoran. Look, the podcast is burning red. It's Super Audio Robo Podcast Z. I'm Ark, that's Neff, and this is the show where we recommend you the finest mecha content for your cultural and artistic development.
Just imagine us like fist bumping and there's an explosion happening while you were doing that entire introduction. That's the kind of energy we're bringing today for this episode.
Very passionately.
Yeah.
It's Mobile Fighter G Gundam.
Oh, man.
Definitely feels like a long time coming, building up to this, considering how much we have offhand mentioned this particular Gundam entry pretty much any time we've had to talk about other parts of the franchise.
And this is our final Gundam show we're going to be talking about, too.
Yeah, we're getting near the end of, like, the topics that have anything directly to do with like our overview episodes, so we're basically going out on, at least from my perspective, what is the best Gundam anime ever. I know everyone has their own, personal favorites. This one is definitely mine.
It's a good one to have. I'm not going to argue with that.
It's a good one to have if you are very naturally biased towards the glory that is super robots.
Mm-hmm.
While still having a lot of the Gundam soul in there, even though anyone looking at it from a glance probably would not think so much, because we'll get into our synopsis. It'll probably give you a decent idea that like this might be something a bit different from what you consider to be Gundam on its surface. And it goes like this. After years of war ravaging the Earth, most of the population has moved off the planet's surface to orbiting space colonies. To prevent further bloodshed, the colonies host the Gundam Fight, where a Gundam representing each nation participates in a tournament to determine who will rule the Earth for the next 4 years. The year is Future Century 60, and the 13th Gundam Fight is about to begin. Neo Japan's representative, Domon Kashu, has been sent to Earth with 2 goals: to win the Gundam Fight and track down the Devil Gundam stolen by his brother Kyoji to clear his father's name. This is a tournament story. This is all about one man's journey to kind of like clear his family's name while also being the strongest motherfucking robot fighter in existence. It sounds very silly, if you might assume.
It is very silly, too. It is actually, but in a good way. It's silly in a good way, trust us.
Yeah, it's got heart to it, so that's important. That like this is quite a seminal entry in the franchise for like a lot of reasons, mainly in terms of like when it came out. Prehistory is loaded, so we might as well just get into that right now.
Yeah.
And like the short of it is that Mobile Fighter G Gundam was conceived to align with the franchise's 15th anniversary, and more famously, / controversially in its time, is that it was the first Gundam entry release that would be unrelated to the Universal Century canon. This was the first time that like the series would ever have like a complete break away from that whole timeline, which was more than just a big deal in terms of like, oh, it's a different universe and characters. It's like it also came with like completely different tone and sensibilities that were like incredibly diverging.
Yeah, it's hard to think about, but this is the first alternate universe Gundam show that has nothing to do with the main timeline, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
We've had like a bunch more after this, but this was the first.
Yeah, and a lot of the alternate universe continuities, when you look at them that came after this one, you find are, in some ways, sometimes they could be pretty crazy and out there, while others are like still a bit more restrained and trying to be more evocative of the obvious elements about the original Gundam.
Mm-hmm.
This one, not so much.
No, this is absolutely not related at all. Well, not even. It's related in themes, but we'll talk about that in later parts.
Yeah. At the very least, this was still a Gundam anime, which means like a lot of principal staff that have been continuing to like work on the franchise at Sunrise up to this point would obviously be working on this. Most of them naturally coming over from the previous entry in the franchise, Victory Gundam, which also just to kind of highlighting further, this was like in the middle of what we described in the past as like the brief period of Gundam's time as like an annual franchise on television, because this would air immediately after, like almost immediately after Victory Gundam had concluded. And so like you have a lot of the same staff, same mecha designers, which means, yep, Kunio Okawara still putting in the work on this. However, most shockingly to anyone, well, I guess not that shocking when you consider it's like it wouldn't be the first time a Gundam anything didn't have him involved, but the man himself, Yoshiyuki Tamano, would not be directing this anime. At least it's important to note that it would be him being not directing a TV Gundam anime, because we already had the OVAs like War in the Pocket, Stardust Memories. Those were handled by different directorial authors essentially. But with this new TV anime, the responsibility was passed down to Yasuhiro Imagawa, this podcast's favorite.
The GOAT himself.
This would not be like the first mecha anime he would start on as director, but like considering what he was also working on during the 90s, this is definitely the first one he would finish.
Yeah, unlike a lot of his other shows, I mean, I still haven't watched Tetsujin 28, but I should someday. This one is a full and complete story. And so you'll be...
Well, when I said finish, I meant this was the one he finished first in terms of production timeline, because Giant Robo went from 92 to 98.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But you're also right about that one. You're right about that detail as well. Although I guess I would also say, because I have watched Tetsujin 28, that it does not feel like it is just a part of a larger story that just wrapped up. It feels like, yeah, that is the whole story. The whole story is done. So yeah, that makes 2 in his track record. It
says a lot about the quality of his work that we still recommend it, even with like how unfinished they can be, I guess.
How much it always leaves you wanting for more.
Yeah, that's actually a better way to put it.
Yeah, so like with him as director, like just the whole genesis of like this project and how it came to like basically be his responsibility is kind of wild as well, because this has to get into how it tends to go with a lot of major franchises, like when they decide to like take such drastic creative decisions at various points is usually informed as like an act of desperation when they feel like their profits and sales numbers are starting to hit a slump, because Bandai was starting to notice this as a result of like Gundam merchandise, Gunpla sales kind of like starting to lag in the early 90s. I don't know how much that possibly could have been like impacted by like the onset of like the recession that hit immediately after the bubble era concluded, or if it was just a case of like general burnout on a lot of like the mobile suit designs and ideas and people wanting to spend their money on it. But like regardless, G Gundam at its like earliest like conception was just a way to like kind of appease Bandai by creating an anime that would like have enough striking inventive Gundam designs that would drive up the sales of like their plastic model kits. You really do need to take a look at these designs to understand just like what the hell they were even thinking of trying to like make something that would stand out from like your typical Universal Century design, because it gets wild. Like we're not kidding with like the synopsis and how like every nation essentially has its own Gundam representative.
Okay, remember Punch Out? This is the Punch Out of Gundam. Think about it in that terms.
Best fucking way to put it. I'd also go as far as to say that when it comes to the Gundam fight itself, it's like a what if the Olympics was just all about giant robots.
Yeah, that's also a good way to put it.
Even down to the part where when the fight is hosted somewhere, it's bad for everyone.
I mean, listen, between the Olympics and giant robot fights, I think I take my chances with giant robot fights. At least it'd be funny or entertaining if I'm not in immediate vicinity anyways.
Yeah, if I could just watch it from a distance, I'm good.
Yeah.
The result of like these crazy ideas is that this is a Gundam anime that's ultimately not focused around the idea of like a conventional war. Like that's obviously the biggest sticking point that like a lot of people had not just audiences, but even the production staff when they were working on it, feeling like this didn't seem like it was a Gundam anime because of just the lack of any focus on like a more traditional style of war with a huge like military kind of emphasis. Instead, it's a full-on battle tournament where every nation has its own Gundam looking like an exaggerated ethnic stereotype. A lot of it all comes together where this is the sort of thing where, like, why I said as much with G Gundam, like, why it's my personal favorite, and I still find it's the ultimate irony when it comes to, like, my two favorite, like, what I think are the best entries of the franchise, this and the first season of Build Fighters. It's an irony where it forgoes a lot of the real robot, like, trappings of like of its genre that like it ultimately popularized from the 80s onward.
Yeah, it's kind of like rejecting all that like the real robot stuff and just embracing where things started in a way with like Mazinger and stuff like that.
Yeah, like among other influences that help it stand out so that it doesn't just come off like, oh, now it's just Gundam with like a monster of the week format or something like that. I mean, it's kind of a fight of the week, but it still doesn't feel like you're just retreading like the exact same narrative structures of those 70s robot classics. And with this being an anime, a Gundam anime, not being directed by Tamino himself, you'd have to imagine there would at least be like some words of advice, some sort of guidance given as far as like who the person in charge basically has to keep in mind when working on this. And we love the man for all the wild things that he has said during his career. One of the more famous things from him regarding G Gundam that has been spread all over the internet is his mission statement to Imagawa: "I want you to destroy Gundam." There is some more like nuance and detail to, I guess, like the intent behind what he was basically saying to Imagawa as far as like how he should approach working on such a different anime compared to the predecessors. And a lot of it comes from there's less value in simply just doing a copy of a previous work, especially if the direct previous work was already a copy of a copy of a copy, and just and like if you just repeat that constantly, the original spirit of the source just gets degraded and the image like becomes nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So like it was an encouragement to be like, you know, rather than make a further degradation of what Tamino and the rest of Hajime Yatate started in the late 70s and like continued to do for the next 15 years, just make a clean break, go for something wildly different, a bold new direction, while proving to the world like as best you can that like, yeah, despite how different this looks on the surface, this is still Gundam.
I think that was the best direction they could have taken this too, which is like, if you just do Gundam again, but worse, you just get Gundam Seed. Ah! Sorry, I just wanted to dig at the Gundam Seed.
I mean, there's that, or there's like, well, I mean, like I obviously have gone on about like my qualms with like how the second season of Double O goes for obvious reasons, but yeah, that's definitely the point. Like, it's kind of crazy to think just how much like this being the first AU continuity had to set such a huge precedence by doing it in a way that was like as divergent from like the rest of the series prior. And so like just the way that Imagawa went about it, you know, like it's reflected in a lot of ways. Obviously, it being a tournament story means that you're going to have giant robot battles emphasized way more than you did like in previous Gundam entries. But like a lot of that is also informed by him actually being a huge Hong Kong action movie buff, because it's not just the robots, but it's also even the human characters, and sometimes combining both aspects into one where you are just seeing a lot of high-fly wuxia bullshit going on like with these giant robot fights, stuff that is like super improbable, not at all realistic in the slightest. But at this point in time, especially after the dearth of just high quality and like legendary Hong Kong action movies that came out from like the past couple decades, it's like it gives it such a unique flair, even compared to other super robot anime before this or even after, I think.
Yeah, it makes it just a unique show with how it blends all these different elements together in a way that actually works for it too.
Even some of the other crazy character stuff that like was super divisive within like the production staff, because again, like, we cannot overstate enough just how Imagawa's direction was like as bold as could be, because like as things got near the end, not only was like Imagawa becoming more comfortable with like what the show was developing into, what direction they went with, but like staying true to the mission that Tomino gave him, he basically used that as like a reason to go even more insane as the show got towards its end. Like, this is something I can say with like the least amount of spoilers as possible. But there is a romantic subplot that runs throughout the course of this entire story. It's barely presented at the start, to the point that you think that like there was no real establishment at all, but only getting more emphasis as you enter the latter half. And the final episode, never mind before it aired, it was already met with controversy by the staff itself, desperate because of certain like word choices and whatnot, that they were begging Imagawa to like relent on it, but instead he was like, nah, I'm gonna stick with this, even if it means I lose my place in the industry after this. I'm going to do it. This is my Gundam.
I'm glad he didn't relent on it, because that ending is beautiful. I'm glad we got it. It's so good.
Anyone out there that's also watched G Gundam in its entirety knows exactly what we talk about with that ending. It's real beautiful.
I'm glad he stuck with his guns, because I didn't realize it was that controversial until like we started doing this.
Like, it's very obvious to think about how there would be a lot of controversy or flack thrown towards the show by fans themselves, because of how much they can take like the thing that they like and seeing it done in a way that that feels unrecognizable would seem like it is an insult to the thing they love. They treat it as like their precious, like kind of like their sacred cow essentially. But but also it does make sense, considering like just the amount of like profit that this franchise has always brought Bandai and Sunrise, that there would be enough worry from people on the inside about like, bro, what are we doing? I don't know about this. I feel like this is going to like ruin us if we go through with this. And then I think the biggest irony is that because this managed to like ultimately be a runaway success, like despite being so different, it gave people the bad idea of like, well, I can just make my own Gundam with my own crazy out there ideas and we'll get away with it no matter how bad it is, which I guess is the unfortunate cynical reality taking advantage of what this anime gave us, I guess is the unfortunate thing, because it sets such a high bar for the AU continuities that we would get from like this point on in the franchise's life. But with all like that crazy production stuff, like the influences that would like go into it, Mobile Fighter G Gundam would air on Japanese TV soon after Victory Gundam had ended, as part of like that brief annual series period that the franchise was in, which meant that, yes, kind of like all like as was the style for like any Gundam TV anime during this time, it is a whopping 49 episodes, going from April 22nd, 1994 all the way to March 31st, 1995. Thus giving birth to the concept of alternate universe continuities. Even if people were initially divided at the start, by the end, it was clear to everyone that it was all worth it.
God, I cannot imagine what it would be like to go from Victory Gundam straight to this. Because Victory Gundam
especially, it has like, from what I've been told, has always had like a disgustingly high fucking kill count.
It is the most Tomino-ass Gundam in that, oh, you were very depressed when you made this. Oh, this is so much.
Oh.
It is like, I don't know how much of Zambot 3 you've watched by now.
Just like the first few episodes still. It's been very difficult to like find like the right opportunity that I can like kind of like marathon on one of my days off with like the editing schedule for this.
Well, it makes Zambot 3 look like a wacky fun kids like cartoon time.
Oh,
That's
joy.
How fucking dark it gets. I don't know if I'd call it good, but it's Well, anyways, we're not talking about Victory Gundam. We're talking about so
No. We're talking about a Gundam that is like
that
positive.
that will
damn
make you
it.
feel good about yourself. That'll make you feel good about
And
everything.
make you laugh because you'll be like, damn, like, what were you smoking when you came up with these mobile suit designs, and where can I get them?
Yeah. Oh yes, let's talk about the Gundams now.
This is another situation, much like what we talked about Build Fighters, where we unfortunately cannot talk about every possible mobile suit in this because there is just too many. We can at least focus on the biggest, like, reoccurring ones that are, like, most important, and like after going through those in detail, we can mention a bit to, like, just very rapid fire some of our favorite miscellaneous mobile suits and, like, why they are so goofy.
Mm-hmm.
The first is like our protagonist Gundam from the very first episode, the Shining Gundam. There's like a whole other, like, part serial number that kind of goes before the start of these, but I feel like it was so much more annoying trying to, like, actually read those serial numbers off in their entirety, because, like, you're never gonna have something that's as concise and, like, easy to remember like the full, like, serial number titles of like the Universal Century units.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's easy to say RX-78-2 when referring to the original Gundam. It's more of a mouthful when you say GF13017NJ.
Yeah. So no one's gonna say
At least there's some logic, like the last two letters basically referring to what colony, which nation the Gundam is affiliated with. In which case, NJ is Neo Japan, because every country that has its own space colony gets rebranded to a Neo version of it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm glad that every nation in the world decided that this was the correct naming scheme to go with. But anyway, yes, Shining Gundam is Neo Japan's representative, bears all the same familiar colors that you expect from a leading Gundam. White, red, blue, traces of yellow. It's one of those designs where, especially when you compare it to how obvious a lot of the stereotypical designs are for the other nations' Gundams, that you almost think that there isn't a similar stereotyping or theme that goes on with the Shining Gundam. But, like, from what I've had to look up, is that there are, like, some influences obviously coming from, like, feudal Japan, like, kind of armor or armaments and stuff like that. At least with, like, the upgrade to this, there's definitely a bit of, like, a kabuki influence.
Yeah.
So, like, that's a bit more of a subtle one. I imagine the reasoning behind, like, not making it the most insanely obvious shit ever is because this was already an anime made for, like, the Japanese market to begin with. It's like they don't need to hammer over the head of their own audience what, like, Japan's Gundam is supposed to represent in its design. They can kind of intuit it a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
You need to beat them over the head when you need to show what America's Gundam is like, where it has fucking football shoulder pads that can detach and like be worn on the hands like boxing gloves. That's real. The Gundam Maxter is real.
Yeah, there's you know what? I'll talk about the other Gundam designs after we're done with the primary mechas.
Yes, we can go from Shining Gundam, which is basically our first half of the show, but kind of like primary unit. But as this was, like, the point during the 90s, like, the expectation for a Gundam anime is that you gotta have your mid-season upgrade, and that upgrade comes in the form of the God Gundam, or Burning Gundam if you grew up with, like, the English dub, like I did. Or I guess we both did, really.
Mm-hmm. Burning Gundam, I'll accept that too. Both names are good.
Both are really good. God obviously makes more sense considering kind of like what the thematic purpose is, considering, like, the main antagonistic force.
Yeah.
But with God Gundam is just like, I've obviously said, like, what some of, like, my favorite mobile suit designs are. If you have to, like, say, like, what a favorite Gundam specific, like, actual Gundam is, favorite one I think for me is still obviously going to be God Gundam, just for, like, its fighting style. Its form is, like, so much more refined compared to the Shining Gundam, especially because of how, like, its chest piece, the way that it's, like, very clean curved look to it that then opens up during its powered up modes, the wings on it that kind of open up into, like, that 6-bladed formation that looks that looks so fucking sick. That like the hand gauntlets as well that also make it look like it's got a little bit of like a claw action to it, even though the claws don't really factor into it as much as its hands, because both Shining and God Gundam, probably its most defining attack are its ability where it just supercharges its hand, grabs its opponent, and then just like crushes it with the energy surging through it. Shining Gundam is obviously called like the Shining Finger, and God Gundam is the God Finger or Burning Finger, obviously, if you're going with like the English version. There's a lot of curious name changes when you look at like the English dub, because some of it is for kind of obvious reasons, at least when it comes to God Gundam, where because of this airing on Toonami in the early 2000s, you know, like a Cartoon Network afternoon block of like cartoon programming, the expectation is we're gonna try and like carefully change some of the wording so that we do not step on the toes of anyone that might take offense to us even so much as mentioning the word. But it also extends to so many other Gundams in this show that it's like, oh, your solution to this was just to make like the most generic sounding alternative, that it kind of deflates like part of the reference that is behind like this naming scheme. So like, okay, I guess it makes sense that Neo England's Gundam would be called the Royal Gundam, but also like it feels hyper specific that you had to come up with the name of John Bull Gundam. That it's like, why would you get rid of that?
I don't know. They should have just kept it. That would have been it's also a funny name, just calling a Gundam John Bull.
Shining Gundam's cool. I especially love the God Gundam. If I ever get back to like buying some more like Gunpla, and I especially decide to building another real grade, I'm gonna make sure it's the God Gundam, because there is one that exists, and I've seen plenty of stop motion build videos that exist on YouTube, and they are always so fucking sick, especially when they like decide to incorporate some of the visual martial arts flair that exists in a lot of the movesets.
Yeah,
because that's one thing that we could definitely mention now, as far as like a big commonality that exists with how Gundams specifically work in this universe compared to like other Gundams or mobile suits, is that the piloting for these robots are all done with like a motion tracer system. Yeah. The pilot is literally in a open cockpit where they're not sitting and using controls. They are instead like wearing like a very skin tight latex suit, somehow less fetishy than what the plug suits in Ava would end up like awakening in people's minds. I don't know. Maybe it did. I'm not sure. It didn't do much for me, but it's the sort of thing where like all those crazy human-like motions that the Gundams are able to do in a fight, that is because their fighters on the inside of the robot are doing the exact same moves.
It's a smart way to get them to like explain why the Gundams do the shit they do. It's like, oh, it's because the fighters could do it as well. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. There's handy technology and equipment that they wear in order to like make that happen. Although in the case of one Gundam fighter, he doesn't need that shit because he's that fucking awesome.
Yeah.
And his Gundam is the Master Gundam, the representative for Neo Hong Kong, one of the sickest fucking Gundam designs in the entire franchise.
Yeah, God.
Like, I don't know if there is a real grade of the Master Gundam like there is for God, but like I probably would get that first if it was available, because it is such a sleek looking suit. It is black. It's got the V-shaped head with big red wings on the back of it. Like, it's the sort of thing where you look at the design elements of it, and if you have any familiarity with like future alternate universe Gundams, you can see how bits and pieces of its design end up informing some of those others, like say Gundam Epion in Wing, for instance, similar head shape.
Yeah.
There's others that like have a lot of the same like curved mechanical wing design that it has, where like, you know, in silhouette it looks like wings, but it's more fair to say that they're just like big rocket boosters at the same time. And like with the Shining and God Gundam, this is also one of the most impressive Gundams to see fight, because it is naturally piloted by a martial arts master.
Also, he uses the wings like a cloak, and that shit is badass. Anytime that happens.
It's real good. Also, he can whip out a Gundam-sized scarf to use as a weapon.
Hell yes.
Don't ask.
Don't ask. Don't worry about it.
Master Gundam is great. So many other Gundams as well that like exist that are participating in this tournament. Like I mentioned offhand, there was Gundam Maxter of Neo America.
Yes.
They're members of what is called the Shuffle Alliance, or at least like the new members of it for this tournament. And that includes like the pilot of the Shining God Gundam, as well as Gundam Maxter, Gundam Rose, which is France's representative and just has the Napoleon Bonaparte's hat as part of his design. The Dragon Gundam representing Neo-China, and the Bolt Gundam representing Neo-Russia.
And there's also a couple of more. In fact, there's a lot more, which I'm just going to rapid fire, like, just list off right now, because some of these designs are like, what were you thinking? Like Matador Gundam, which has a bull for its chest. It still has a Gundam design, but it's got a bull for a chest.
It's Neo Spain's Gundam.
It's Neo Spain's Gundam. Mandala Gundam. It's a bell. It's a Gundam with a bell attached to it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mermaid Gundam. It's a Gundam in a mermaid suit. And my personal favorite, Neo Malaysia's Gundam, the Skull Gundam, which is a Gundam with a Dr. Wily skull chest.
Fucking beautiful.
Beautiful.
And that's not even getting to like. There's one that like maybe like almost do a double take when I was reminded that this was actually a thing, because this gets into like so topical that I'm like, oh, you could never get away with making this in a new Gundam even as a joke. Do you remember that apparently Neo Iraq is one of the colonies and that they have their own Gundam?
I just forgot about that completely. I don't remember.
Yeah, most people would not think much of it because the English dub just decided to translate it to, oh yeah, it's just the Desert Gundam, which is probably the safer option than calling it the Scud Gundam.
The Scud Gundam.
And its only time that it appears in the show is when Gundam Maxter, the representative of Neo America, fucking kicks its shit in.
Oh.
For historical context, everyone at home, this was at least 3 years after the end of the Gulf War.
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't remember this aspect. Yeah,
probably not, but I do, because it's like this is just one of those like darkly humorous things where it is like it's so inappropriate and makes me laugh. It shouldn't. There's some. You are correct in your assessment earlier that this is like the punch out mentality for robots.
Yeah.
But even I look at that, I'm like that still goes one step farther than I think even Nintendo would have ever thought to.
I don't know.
Like we have Bald Bull, but like there's nothing like incredibly politically charged about his design or character.
I completely forgot about this, and just everything about this is like, yeah, you can't do this nowadays. This is specifically just in that time.
But at least more positively, my last thing I can say as far as like other Gundams that I remember is the Nether Gundam, representative of Neo Holland, in which it just manages to lame it out and like wait until the finals are underway, because it is a Gundam that is a windmill, so it just hangs out with its windmill brethren in Europe, as every other Gundam is just fighting each other until there's the prerequisite amount of Gundams left that they can get the finals underway. That's genius, honestly. That's playing the long game over like 11 fucking months that it takes in universe to get to the finals.
This show is just so much. I wish I was there for when they were designing these Gundams. I want to hear them explain this shit to other people.
There is at least one more Gundam that we can get into, but it's a very different type. And that is the Devil Gundam, or Dark Gundam, as it would be called in the English dub for obvious reasons. And I will say, calling this a Gundam definitely feels like something of a stretch, because it's more fair to say that this is a self-evolving mechanical monster. Like this entire like mobile suit. No, fuck it, I'm not even calling it a mobile suit. Again, everything about it just defies traditional description. Is like the key driving force for like a lot of the plot, because this was an experimental Gundam that at least according to official sources and what our main characters are told, was like stolen and taken to Earth, and they need to find the Devil Gundam and destroy it before it uses its regenerative properties to like basically grow out of control and consume the entire Earth.
Yeah.
And its whole design, like its core design, when you look at it, is like it's a gigantic Gundam head where like the V fin that's usually like on like the front of the helmet, the center of it then has like a spinal looking structure that extends out to a smaller Gundam torso.
It's ridiculous. It is more.
And also it can summon a bunch of what are called Gundam heads, which are essentially like giant like snake-like objects with Gundam heads at the end of it. Their faceplates can open up to reveal mouths. And an interesting detail I do remember being pointed out, which I think is a nice little like nod to the franchise's history, is that there are multiple Gundam head designs, and all of the Gundam heads are based on the head designs of each of the titular Gundams from previous entries. Like if you look closely, you can find one that is just the Zeta Gundam's head. There's a lot of Gundams. That's the most that we can really focus on in as brief as we can make it. So we might as well move on to characters, of which, again, there are plenty, but I think it's a lot easier for us to just kind of keep the focus currently on the main characters I've decided to highlight because they have a lot to do with our with our primary mecha we just discussed. For instance, our hero, Domon Kashu, a very hard-headed, really, martial arts pupil of one of the greatest masters in human history, who is now tasked with having to, buy his country to, search for the Devil Gundam and take it out, while also simultaneously partaking in the Gundam fight in order to win this year, ensuring Neo Japan's rule. Yada yada, because everything about the tournament has politics behind it. It's a goddamn proxy war.
Yeah.
Domon is such a interesting character that is because of how super robot coded G Gundam is, naturally it makes sense that its main character would also feel a lot like a super robot protagonist. But he definitely has signs about him that show that he is not a Koji Kabuto, put simply. I'd say he kind of leans a bit closer to something maybe more along the lines of Tetsujin, not so much with the inferiority complex, but definitely the fact that a lot of his outward behavior is designed to kind of mask his own issues.
I'd say he's more like a mix between like a real robot protagonist and a super robot protagonist, where he's got his issues, but he's also very hot-headed and hot-blooded.
Especially because just when you look at his whole character history, is that how he is in the show, he was not like that when he was a young kid growing up. He was actually a sweet little boy. It's just all it took was a bad string of family circumstances. Especially when he came home after years of training with his master and being thrust into a situation where he has to just essentially close himself off and focus on his goal, even though it kind of hurts everyone around him at the start, and it's only by meeting all these different people throughout the course of the Gundam fight that it does get him to finally open himself back up again.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen very quickly for obvious reasons. There's moments where he has his usual outbursts and just goddamn rude behavior that makes things worse before it gets better. I do like Domon a lot as a character. He earns his he earns his happy ending for sure.
He does go through a journey.
He does, especially with one of the most important people in his life being there with him on this journey. Even during the worst parts of it, and that's Rain Mikamura, who's a doctor, childhood friend of Domon, even back from when they were little kids, and so she's basically his operating assistant during the course of the Gundam fights, and this is what I was talking about, where it's it's clear that between these two, they are the ones with the romantic subplot, and that when you watch this show for the first time, you really do think that there's no way that there could possibly be any romantic tension or drive between these two, considering how closed off Domon is right from the get-go, and Rain basically has to be the one that's speaking to other people on his behalf because he is otherwise so abrasive.
Yeah, this is one of those things that just very slowly develops over the show, and also this is a long show, so it takes a while to develop.
And at least when you do get to the moments where you feel that the next major step is being taken in and acknowledging this relationship and getting them to the two of them closer, it does feel really good when it happens.
It does.
Yeah. yeah, Domon, Rain, like they very solid characters. You see them all throughout. Our next character, who's like also has like very close ties to Domon, but for a very different reason, at least like during the course of the Gundam fight, and that is the undefeated of the East himself, Master Asia.
Oh, yeah.
Who in the backstory was because he represents Neo Hong Kong. He is the one that actually won the previous Gundam fight tournament. So like this is basically a case of like our main character constantly going up against not only his former master, but also the previous champion of this entire fight. And there's some fantastic like passionate voice acting that goes on in this show. I forgot to mention with Domon that he is voiced by like a very like famous voice actor, especially like in terms of this genre of anime. The Tomokazu Seki is Domon's voice actor and does a fantastic job. The rest of them do. We mentioned, watching the English dub for this before, and obviously, besides the name changes, there's some, admittedly cheesy, kind of awkward, like early English anime dub voice acting going on. You might like it or you might not. I think Master Asia is the number one reason why you should give the English dub of G Gundam a shot, because holy shit, he sells it. He is running laps around everyone else in terms of line reads and acting. He chews that scenery so goddamn hard. This old man with like amazing kung fu skills, where everything he says, like Japanese or English, you just like look at the contents of what he says, and it's like meme quality almost.
Yeah, anytime, like there are some moments with Master Asia that just live rent free in my head. I constantly just think of that one part where he just says, "Get mad, get mad,
get so mad it drives you mad."
It's so funny. Yeah. It's just so good.
It's so good that I made it a sound redeem on my Twitch channel during when I was briefly streaming.
Hell yes.
It made sense considering some of the games that I would play. Yeah, you can imagine it got used to really good effects during those times.
I bet.
I love everything about Master Asia, and like the reason that like Domon is going up against him, not just because he's like also participating in the tournament, but also because, as it is revealed shortly after his introduction, that Master Asia has decided to ally itself with the Devil Gundam itself. For presumably the reasons of like using its power to take over the world, like in alliance with like Neo Hong Kong itself, because the person that like runs that country is also interested in utilizing its power. But Asia's motivations are not quite that one note. Like he's actually dealing with like kind of not unlike Domon, who is very much like Domon's obviously like kind of like at the start closes himself off to focus on like what his own mission is. Master Asia has like a lot of like kind of troubling thoughts of his own that he's dealing with based on like past experiences, especially in regards to him participating in the Gundam fight and realizing, firsthand, being at the center of it, like what it actually is, and just feeling like the next step that he needs to take in his life is to side with an eldritch abomination of a robot. It makes sense.
It makes sense. Don't worry about it. No, actually, it is one of those things where it's like, things seem simple, but there's more to the surface, which is how I describe this entire show, actually, where it's like, Master Asia is actually the perfect character because he seems like a one-note villain with a very, like, simple, like, motivation and everything, but there's, like, actually way more to him than it seems, and the deeper the show go, like, and there's like actually things to dig deep there.
It's definitely a staple of like Imagawa's other super robot anime that he has directed as well, because you could definitely see this with like certain characters in like Shin Mazinger or Giant Robo, Tetsujin 28, because I mean like it makes sense that this is all dealing with like like narrative conventions that are all tied to like a genre of anime that was incredibly popular in the 70s. And I guess to close things out on our primary characters, like just kind of rapid fire, like I mentioned that there is the concept of the Shuffle Alliance, that there were like various Gundams participating in this fight that are also part of that same group, which Domon is actually part of. He's part of the new Shuffle Alliance. But like the other members include Neo America's representative, Chibity Crockett, one of the best goddamn Americans in anime, put simply.
Chibity is the most America. We are not talking about his episode, but I want to briefly mention the scene that made me lose it the most.
Oh yeah,
where he was having like a crisis because he was fighting a clown Gundam. Don't ask. Don't. He's afraid of clowns, and he's comforted.
Understandable.
By his gang of what would you call them? What would you call
his
them?
Angels?
His angel, and he was comforted by his angels, by all of them singing "The Land of the Free" to him.
Yes.
By the way, that's a dub-only thing. The original Japanese is like something different, but this is why I would say watch the dub, because you get moments like this, and it's magical.
That's such a good touch. Yeah. Chibity's fucking amazing. And then there's obviously George Desand, who is Neo France's representative. Very, very fancy, aristocratic-looking French dude. Sai Saichi, who's pretty much like the kid of the group representing Neo China, has like his own, masters that kind of act as like his guardian, overseeing like his journey and his training. And Neo Russia, the Bolt Gundam's pilot is Argo, just a big built a shit fucking Russian or Russian convict, I should say, who is constantly led around by his prison warden who is a very hot babe known as Nastasha, which makes you think, okay, is this just part of your job in Russia's prison system, or is this like your fetish?
Yes.
Yeah, one word answer, nothing more. Moving on. Final character is Stalker, the narrator. His job is the narrator. He has a physical presence. That's it. He's fucking awesome. He has an eye patch that he rips off at the end, revealing that he doesn't need the eye patch anyway. It's just for show.
Understandable. It looks good on him. But he's a character. He's great. That's all you need to know. We don't need to go any further. He is a character. He counts.
He's very good at getting you up to date on what exactly happened in the episode prior to the one that you were watching at the moment, which helped a lot when it came to our highlight discussion that we'll eventually get to for this episode. But I guess to get us closer to that, the next thing to obviously get into is, why do we recommend this obviously amazing anime?
Why do we?
Well, I guess just explain why. At this point, 16 episodes in, if you've been listening up to this point, you should not be surprised that this is hosted by fans of Super Robot anime. Like the two of us love this shit, and that like a Gundam anime choosing to embrace those traditions would naturally come highly recommended. But it's important to note, like, as we said as much that we could during like the prehistory describing like what went into making this, is that despite how different it was from past entries and even future entries after this, it still fits into the broad ethos of the franchise, and like what it still represents like a lot of the core themes that Gundam's kind of had like since the beginning, particularly like in terms of what its views are about war and humanity. It's just portrayed in an extremely different light, since this is no longer about a conventional war with like heavy military themes going on. Instead, with the idea of G Gundam being about a tournament, that means like a tournament that has like a huge ton of like political motivation from every nation involved trying to win no matter what. Essentially, like, it is a war by a different method. It's a proxy war. The whole idea in universe, why they switched it is that they thought it was a more humane solution than just throwing away like thousands or millions of innocent lives. But it does show that, like, even with a change to what they consider to be the solution to a previous problem, it's naturally going to bring about its own set of problems that, unfortunately, like, 13 fights in at this point, people are only starting to be woken up to the fact that, like, this actually has issues. Like, the people that are in charge of, like, hosting the Gundam fight do not seem to understand that there are still people on the Earth while this is happening in close proximity.
Yeah,
like, the Earth is the ring, as they call it, quite literally, as a gigantic, like, laser beam, like, boxing ring looking thing forms around the orbit of the Earth itself. Because the whole Earth is the ring, it means like there's nothing to stop a fight from just breaking out in someone's neighborhood and completely ruining their life. Even more so than the fact that they couldn't even get off of Earth to go to the colonies, which are in way better condition.
Yeah, that's the thing, y'all. This is still a Gundam show. As ridiculous and over the top as shit can be, as stupid as it can get. This has themes and it still has like talks about the meaning of of war and violence and what it does to people. And it doesn't hold back on any of that shit, actually. It still shows like Ark says, it shows the consequence of it. And it's like that's kind of the magic of this show.
Like, even with how much it like harms the environment on the Earth itself, like more emphasis on that aspect, considering that there is admittedly a lot less human casualties as a result of how the Gundam fight is set up. That, like, I also point to this as being an example, like a good example of a piece of media with environmentalism message where it doesn't become obvious and preachy about it.
Yeah.
And that's just how you can tell, like, how there are two types of people out there that, like, when they say they've watched G Gundam and like they can actually prove that yes, they have actually watched through it. They aren't just saying it as a lie. Is that okay? You've watched it, but there's probably like two things you might have gotten out of it. You might have gotten what we just talked about, in that it does have like a theme of, like, you know, a war by a different method is still a war, and that still has consequences. You either got that part,
Yeah.
or you were just basically like swayed in by the ridiculousness of like the Gundam fight itself, and you just fall back into the category of those people that are like, wow, cool robot.
To be fair, that was me when I was younger, when I was watching this show. I took a rewatch.
I mean, same.
For me to realize that. To realize all the stuff on the service. But yeah.
Yeah, the former is a lot more obvious when you are like more of an adult age, for obvious reasons. I can at least say when I was watching this as a kid, it got my attention. It got me to remember it a lot more than even when I was watching Gundam Wing. Whereas, like, I remember with Wing, there would always be like a point in the progression of the plot where I just forgot things that came after, and I only realized when I did a rewatch, like, as a teenager, why that was. And it's like, oh yeah, that's just because this plot starts to lose its mind after a point. G Gundam thankfully doesn't. It remains very cogent in its like in its plot, what it's trying to aim for, and being able to do it so well while merging it with fantastic martial arts style robot battles, and even paying off on a romance story that, by Imagawa's own admission, he wasn't even really sure at the beginning if he felt like he could go through with it because of just how he had no experience writing those sort of things, but somehow managed to make it work by the final episode. Like, anyone that has not watched it and is going to, you'll understand when we say that the heroes win with the power of love. That is not a joke. Many things in this anime, when we say them, sound like a joke, but they are serious.
One thing we always appreciate here is sincerity and earnestness, and this is one of the most earnest shows that we might be talking about. There is not a single drop of irony here, and that's to its like benefits.
Like, so many good things that really do just like warm your heart when you watch them. And if it's the sort of thing where, like, if someone isn't really like that deep into the mecha rabbit hole like we are, and kind of want to find more things to watch, if they have somehow like watched the Gundam series and the one that they watched was this, and they're still asking the question, then I think with, like, it is so clear the answer really shouldn't be to just, you know, watch more Gundam, although that's also valid, but you should be watching other Gundam anime for a different reason than this, just as far as like tone and mechanics. It's more clear with, like, if you are a fan of G Gundam, that you're more or less primed to really appreciate what the super robot genre has to offer, especially like the best entries of that franchise, where it is able to do this very great melding of like hype, over the top, sometimes funny, but still engaging like robot shenanigans, but with plot and characters that have like a genuine heart and sincerity to them.
You'd probably definitely be into super robots if you love this show.
So with all that said, this is fortunately one of those Gundam entries where it is fairly easy to like find places online to like be able to just watch it legitimately. No matter how much initial controversy there was in its time, again, G Gundam did prove popular enough by the end, especially, you know, overseas, like when that got distributed in the early 2000s, that like there are plenty of places to get it, especially digitally. Crunchyroll has the entire anime on their subscription service. It is subtitled only though, so, at least from what I looked at. Like there wasn't any mention I saw of like also including a dub, but then again, I don't think dubs are really anything that Crunchyroll particularly concerns them with traditionally.
Think they've been adding more dubs, but I don't think they're going to be adding a dub for G Gundam.
Yeah, which watching it subtitled, you're still gonna have a good time. Tomokazu Seki's like delivery as Domon is fucking perfect. It's worth it for that. But then if you can, at some point after, you know, if you watched it subbed and you're like, man, that is so good, I'll watch that again someday. When you do watch it again, make sure to watch it in English for Master Asia.
It's worth it just for him.
Yeah,
trust us on this.
And of course, there's always going to be physical media options out there, but they're more pricey. Least of all due to the fact that, you know, they were printed years and years ago and haven't really gotten any refresh. So it's like they're more or less going to be like on like secondhand markets or whatever. But point is, there are plenty of options to get a hold of G Gundam and watch it. You know, it's a time investment, 49 episodes in all, but I could definitely say compared to a lot of other 49 episodes, it doesn't feel like it's going to waste your time that much.
It's going to be you can take your time on it. You can binge it or watch it like one episode a day. Just go at your own pace.
At the very least, you could expect like almost every episode to have something exciting in it.
Yeah.
Because this is the Gundam fight. You're here to see the Gundams fight. Definitely the longest our non-spoiler section has gone, I must say, but it makes sense considering there's
a lot to talk.
I guess that's just the nature of any Gundam that we talk about, even ones that are the most non-Gundam-like on their surface.
Like any Gundam show would have taken about this long, I feel, because there's just so much to talk about.
But this one, meanwhile, was like, we love it so much, that means we just have so much more to talk about. And we have even more to talk about in the rest of this episode as we get ready for our spoiler discussion.
Yeah, so we will see you all soon.
Let's get things started. Highlight discussion for G Gundam. Ready? Go!
Oh, you had that one ready. I should have.
Oh, you know it.
I should have fucking known you were going to do something like that. That was perfect.
I had so many opening line candidates I wanted to use, but it was like it was hard for me to figure out how to justify any others. I figured I should at least go with the East is burning red and just modify that. But whatever. Here we are. It's our highlight discussion for G Gundam. We got 2 episodes to talk about. Unsurprisingly, both of these feature a heavy dose of Master Asia. And our first one that we're talking about is episode 24. The Birth of the God Gundam. This is an episode that, like, the short of it, I could say is one of the greatest mid-season upgrades. Not just for Gundam, I'm going to say for pretty much any mecha anime that has ever flirted with the idea of, like, giving their main characters a big upgrade in terms of, like, their primary robots.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you felt that strongly about this. I mean, it's pretty great, so I'm not going to argue.
Yeah, a lot of it is in its, like, framing and presentation is, like, the big one, obviously. But for context, going into this episode, basically context for what has happened for the first half of the fucking series, Gundam Fight has gone on for 11 months by this point. Domon has met the members of the new Shuffle Alliance, made friendships with them, met Master Asia in Shinjuku, Tokyo, before discovering that he has pulled a heel turn and allied himself with the Devil Gundam, meets a mysterious Gundam fighter affiliated with Neo Germany called Schwarzbruder, which, we didn't mention that in the previous, but that's just because it's like, you know, his appearances are very rare, and the true nature of Schwartz is, it's big spoilers, even compared to this. But it's the sort of thing where, like, after meeting Schwartz, Domon has been training in the Guyana Highlands to, like, refine his technique so that he can finally take down the Devil Gundam, and allegedly he succeeds. Like, you see it go down. This does not go well with Master Asia, because now Domon has to get past him in order to hurry to Neo Hong Kong for the finals, because now the number of Gundam fighters has been whittled down to the exact amount necessary for the rest of the tournament to take place in the one thriving city on Earth still left. Just so much that needed to be covered.
Yeah.
Like, as far as like how this episode even fucking starts. And you still, like, even as the fight is going to go on, you get to see your first proper look of Neo Hong Kong. And it is really important to note how it is like, this is like the one place on Earth that looks like it is from a completely different universe compared to how the rest of the planet is at this point, due to years upon years of Gundam fights taking place.
Yeah, I feel like it's interesting that it's Hong Kong, but it also makes sense considering all the inspirations for this show. It's like, oh yeah, of course it'd be Hong Kong where we get all the sick Gundam fights.
Yeah, and also like they do a decent enough like explanation off to the side where the whole idea is that Hong Kong couldn't afford its own space colony, and it took like a guy coming in, setting up shop as Hong Kong's prime minister, coming in with like some great like plans and a vision to help like rebuild the city-state essentially, to make it actually prosper just as well as any of the colonies. It's too bad that we know like who this prime minister is and that he's a piece of shit, but he only factors in like in a lot of the later episodes for obvious reasons. But we got to get back to the main fight in the Guyana Highlands. Master Asia versus Domon. Asia is real pissed. Like, in further examples of why the English dub of this show is so good and why I recommend watching it for Master Asia is just some of the lines themselves, both in like how they are translated and read out verbatim, combined with Asia's voice actor having such a perfect gruff delivery. Have you forgotten my name already? I'm undefeated of the East, which means I've never experienced defeat.
He delivers it with his full chest. It's great.
Yeah, again, like, we're not kidding when it's like running laps over all of the other dub actors in terms of like the voice acting and line delivery. Closest I feel like that does kind of get to matching it at sometimes is Domon, but that's only when he is in like full-on hot-blooded mode. Like when he's just trying to like speak normally, is like, it is so awkward sounding but kind of charming. In a way. It's like I think of G Gundam's English dub with the same level of fondness I have for the English dub of Tenchi Muyo. It hits just right in the level of bad that it's nostalgia is able to help me get through it.
I feel like the dub of the show actually is to its benefit. It actually helps it, like, because it fits the tone they're going for.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Yeah, there's definitely, still moments you could look at where, like, you could say things a bit more with your chest in this instance, which is obviously why, like, Master Asia, like, is able to be just the star of the English cast.
Yeah.
And still manages to even work, even when he's doing, like, the less shouty type of line deliveries. Like, the moment when he is basically going on about how frustrating it is that Domon is involved in the Gundam fight and just being like, oh, if only you weren't here, if only I didn't meet you in Shinjuku and have to fight you like this, where he's like, he looks like he's starting to tear up, like he no longer has like the fucking tiny dot pupils. They are actually like he is feeling actual genuine sadness over this. Like one of those early signs of showing, like, it's slowly revealing more that he is not a one-dimensional villain. He still kicks a lot of ass, though, with his Master Gundam.
He does.
Even without needing to wear, like, fucking skin-tight tracer suits in the same way that the other Gundam fighters do. He just pilots it like normal because his aura is just that strong.
He's just that good. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but even amidst this fight, like, one thing that is important that Domon needs to do before he can actually get to Neo Hong Kong is that after he defeated the Devil Gundam and Master Asia basically went on the offensive, is that Neo Japan's latest mobile suit dropped for him in a large like pod carrier thing. It's one of those things where it's like, I'm pretty sure like it's existed. I forget if it's a drop pod or a shuttle, maybe both in UC Gundam that is used for transporting mobile suits like to Earth and back. I seem to recall those.
I think so.
Like it looks like that on the surface.
Yeah, it's probably very intentional, I imagine.
But regardless, like it has the God Gundam inside. Domo needs to get to it. And the Shining Gundam is taking a massive fucking beating that he has to basically bail out of it. Though not before basically inputting one last program in it so that it would basically take a blow from Master Asia itself just to bide some time. Like it explains why the Shining Gundam was able to suddenly stand up and just like take a fist straight through the abdomen. But like this ties into like the ultimate reveal, the activation of the God Gundam itself, but I always like to read this as having a lot more of a inference that the Gundam is acting of its own will, like tying back into what we always like about the romanticism aspect of giant robots, where it feels like they are more than just tools.
Yeah, where it's like, it's your partner, it's your buddy, it's more than just a war machine.
Because when you think about it in that context, it makes it all the more sadder that this is essentially the Shining Gundam's retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Like, or more than retirement, it's literally sunsetting it. And it's all the harder as, like, Domon is able to make it to the God Gundam inside its pod. The pod kind of fell off of a crumbling cliff, so, like, kind of got jostled around a bit. And even when he gets inside, he realizes that he fucked up getting out of the Shining Gundam too early, because the new Gundam's not going to be able to move unless it is given all of the battle data that the Shining Gundam has basically accumulated over the past 11 months. So it's just sitting there, making him an easy target for Asia, who is just ready to come down on him and just fucking end his life. Again, it is no exaggeration. Master Asia is pissed this episode.
This is the angriest he'll ever be, I feel. I don't think he ever gets this angry. Or maybe he does, but, you know.
Maybe close to, like, his final battle, I would say.
Yeah.
You know, where it matters the most for him at that point in his development. Yeah, we've got a big problem with the new Gundam not moving. Everyone else has already made it to Neo Hong Kong, including Neo Japan's representatives. Like, everyone is kind of in a rush, thinking, seriously, what the fuck is Domon doing? Did the God Gundam even arrive? And then having to verify, like, okay, it did show up. It's not moving though because the battle data has not been properly transferred to it yet. Something seems to be keeping it up. So Rain makes her biggest contribution for this episode, where her father, a scientist that is also there, has created a brainwave communicator, a little headset with the same V-shaped fin on the forehead, like the RX-78
Yeah,
too.
of course.
Again, despite how tonally different things are in G Gundam, you could still point to, yeah, that's still a Gundam.
Still a Gundam.
That's still Gundam themed. Mm-hmm. And this communicator is what is going to essentially use Rain to remote control the Shining Gundam, what remains of it, in the Guyana Highlands, and get it to just crawl with like every last ounce of energy it has to Domon and like transfer its energy. And like as it goes on, like you see kind of inside her mentally, like she's getting glimpses because of the connection to Domon that is being made with like this brainwave communicator, actually starting to get a sense of, oh, there are actually a lot of people that Domon truly cares about, you know, like the people in the Shuffle Alliance, you know, the new members of the Shuffle Alliance, his master, even though they are now on opposing sides, and of course at the center of it all is her.
It shows that he actually deeply cares about her, which, okay. This is going to show up more in the next episode we're going to talk about, but I just want to say, when I was rewatching the show, the Domon Raid relationship was a little uncomfortable at the start because it was maybe a
Yes,
little abusive.
you're not wrong. Yeah, I get like I said as much about how it's like I would not blame someone for thinking that there was no real like romantic relation to begin with, even if it was buried deep down, because it just does not look like it.
Yeah, but I think to the show's credit, it does make Domon realize like he's been an ass, he's in the wrong, and needs to be a better person to Rain and to everybody around him in general. Especially, I think that's what made the ending pay off so well too, with his whole speech.
Yeah, where it's like his final admission of who he is as a character. And even before that ending can even happen, you still have to have moments like this where Domon is able to be like that level of honest with her and actually kind of showing that he cares as the Shining Gundam reaches out towards the God Gundam, fingers interlocked in hands, transferring the last bit of energy it has on all of its combat data. And finally, the God Gundam is born. The pod opens up like a flower blooming, holding the body of the Shining Gundam in his hands like a Princess Carrie. And it's just like this is what I'm talking about, where I say this is like my favorite. Like, this is what I think is the greatest mid-season upgrade in like not just Gundam but anything. Like, there's so much like emotional and like romantic overtones with this, over what is essentially like being honest with your feelings of love.
Yeah.
And that is the thing that finally awakens Domon's new mobile suit. Essentially, what remained of the Shining Gundam is now reborn as a god.
Yeah, I'm hearing you get all emotional about it. I understand because, like, I feel like this is why we love super robot shows in general and why we kind of recommend this show very heavily. It's because they're always so loud with their symbolism and their emotions. They want you to feel it.
Yes.
And this scene is like so in your face about what it wants, what kind of emotions it wants you to feel. And that's what kind of to its benefit. It's like, no, look how much this means to everybody involved, to Domon and Rain.
So much so that like there's a brief moment where like it feels almost tonally inappropriate when like God Gundam just immediately retaliates against the Master Gundam and buries it head first, legs sticking out of the ground. But it's a good way of showing that at this point, you know, after the struggle of like just getting to the God Gundam and having it activate, especially with the help of Rain coming through and like speaking to his emotions and thoughts directly, he has the clarity now to be like, I am not playing around with you and your bullshit anymore. Mm-hmm. I am going. And even as he's leaving, there's just one last like farewell to the Shining Gundam as its body is just lying against the cliff face. It's like, yeah, we'll not see the Shining Gundam again as it is, but we will see at least a palette swap in the form of the Rising Gundam. Mm-hmm. That's not the main fighting force for Neo Japan. No. The God Gundam is. And unfortunately, Domon's almost out of time in terms of getting to Neo Hong Kong. So remember how this anime emphasizes that the Earth is the ring, like a ring in a boxing or wrestling match. So let's just fucking use that ring in orbit to slingshot us straight to Neo Hong Kong. It works.
Of course they do some shit like that. It's like, oh, yeah, why the fuck not? It works. It makes sense with the internal logic of the show, so go for it, I guess.
And naturally, as you'd expect, at the last possible second, despite other last-minute arrivals trying to knock him off course, Domon makes it in time. Literally lands on the final second of the countdown. Such a fucking perfect end to like the first half of this anime. You get your new mobile suit upgrade coinciding perfectly with like the semblance that like we are now entering a new phase of this world-spanning tournament where the stage is no longer the rest of the world. It is now the most prosperous city on Earth, owned by the winners of the previous tournament. And even Stalker shows up at the end of the episode while everyone's having like a very tearful, emotional moment, you know, just like the members of the Shuffle Alliance just like broing out with Domon is like, hell yeah, you made it. I knew you'd do it, man. Really, you know, Rain like being emotional and comforted by Chibity's angels and all the other female characters, and Stalker's just giving everyone like a tease for like what fights are going to be coming next. And as he says, let's get things started. Gundam Fight Final Battle all set. Ready? Go! With the exact same stock animation he is going to use till the end of this fucking series.
Good, I never wanted to change. He should always take off his eye patch in the same exact way.
Yep, the eye patch, the tuxedo jacket, everything. More anime need narrators like him.
Also, I just want to mention that when Doon buries Master Asia and then hits him with like the jet or whatever of his Gundam, I thought Master Asia was dead, but no, he's fine. He comes back later. He's okay.
Yeah,
they don't explain how he got out of it or why he doesn't look like he did during the fight, but whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, we're not gonna think much about the fact that, like, I guess not off model, but his hair was definitely off color compared to every other episode he is in.
Yeah.
But also, the simpler answer is, you fool, he's undefeated of the East.
There, that's all you need to know.
He's back, which means he was not defeated.
Yeah.
He was just stalled.
He got better.
He got better. And is now the side of Prime Minister and organizer for the tournament. So now we got to get into our next episode, episode 39, The Ultimate Attack, Duel with Master Asia. Yeah, I told you that we're gonna be we're gonna keep talking about Master Asia. He deserves it. But context for this episode, what happened before, again, courtesy of Stalker, giving his handy pre-episode narration. Previous episode's fight was a tag team match that was organized with Argo and the Gundam fighter of Neo Canada, Andrew Graham, versus Domon, and another important character, but really only important in this half of the show because that's when she's introduced, Allenby Beardsley of Neo Sweden. If we were to be focusing on a different set of highlight episodes than what we decided to here, we would definitely be putting a lot more time into talking about Allenby because of her introduction being made to kind of act as a wrinkle, but also accelerate the romantic plot and development between Domon and Rain.
Yeah, also, it's too bad we're not talking about Allenby that much because I actually really like her as a character. But unfortunately, this is not an episode focused on her.
No, the most you're really going to get a focus on as far as, like, giving the context is that, like, her Gundam, the Nobel Gundam, which, if you look at it at a glance, is very feminine, has a bow on its chest, yellow hair. Yes, this did come out a few years after Sailor Moon. How could you tell? It's also outfitted with a berserker system. She doesn't like using it, and eventually was able to, like, basically, like, convince, like, her team managers to just cut it out with that shit. But unfortunately, someone decided to reactivate it on her again, and it causes her to go apeshit and nearly kill Andrew Graham in the process. It's the fight kind of goes bad. I forget if they said anything specifically about, like, who won the specific match, because it felt like there was no real winner in that case, considering it was like a hard interrupt, all things considered. I don't know, I guess maybe Domon and Allenby technically because of how both were essentially fighting separately in the same arena. But regardless, the Berserker system was engaged again without her permission, or even without, like, the knowledge of, like, Neo Sweden even knowing that like, she's left unconscious. You do see, like, one thing we can at least say in regards to Allenby is that, like, with her introduction, the reason it kind of presents a bit of a wrinkle in, like, the romantic subplot is because of how quickly Domon shows a lot more immediate care on the outset towards Allenby compared to Rain, which does present a new problem as you get into, like, the middle of this episode.
He's way more cordial to Allenby than he ever is to Rain for most of this show, and Rain might get a little jealous over it, understandably.
Yeah. There's at least kind of a more obvious reason why I think it's easier for him to be that much more friendly and forthcoming with Allenby is because of the fact that they are both Gundam fighters.
Yeah.
And it's also clear how, like, he has an obvious friendship with the other members of the Shuffle Alliance. It's like people that are in similar situations as him are a lot more immediately relatable compared to Rain, who is, like, not participating in the fights whatsoever. You know, she supports. And like at like the end of this fight, after saving Allenby from the wreckage of her Gundam, she's unconscious. Paramedics arrive. Very clearly, the show could not make these paramedics look any more suspicious, what with the shading around their eyes.
It's like the most fucking evil paramedics they could have made for this scene.
And completely brushing aside Rain as well, who has a background as a doctor, so she should be qualified to, look after this. But like, no, she just gotta gets sidelined immediately by these shady motherfuckers that were clearly responsible. Because we need to talk very briefly. Much like how we talked briefly about Allenby, we need to talk about Prime Minister Wong, aka how Imagama almost wanted to have the antagonist of this arc be called Chow Yun Fat. Because Wong's full name is Wong Yun Fat.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he likes Chow Yun Fat. He based Wong's design on Chow Yun Fat's character from God of Gamblers, I think it's called. Like, we were not kidding when we said that the guy is a Hong Kong movie buff.
Bro loves what he loves, I guess. Just put in your work. Why not?
Yeah. But the thing to kind of highlight with like why Wong is the antagonist in this case is because obviously the Devil Gundam, despite being taken care of seemingly in the Guyana Highlands, it is still not completely destroyed. Wong has aspirations of using its powers to take over over humanity, take over the Earth and the colonies. And like, in order to do that, especially to kind of draw out the power of the Devil Gundam, he needs the strongest fighter. Initially, him and Master Asia are in agreement of like doing it to like basically have Domon be that candidate. But after seeing the Berserker system, Wong decides, you know what? This shit's way cooler. I'm gonna push for her to be like our number 2 in our bid for world conquest, which does not sit well with Asia at all, considering you really do see that it's very clear that it's not world conquest that Master Asia is looking for the same way that that Wong is. So you get an argument between the two of them in Wong's office about the whole thing. Master Ace is trying to like deny any allegations about the fact that he is clearly showing favoritism towards Domon, trying to get him to be pushed as the finalist that he gets to fight at the end of the tournament.
Yeah.
While being like, no, nonsense, I fucking hate his guts, piece of shit.
You can say he's being very tsundere about his feelings at this moment.
Again, Master Asia, fantastic martial arts expert, while still doing everything he can to like bury his true emotions.
Yeah.
Unless he can communicate them with his fists, he will not say what it is.
Yeah, you can. It's like you definitely start to see that. Oh yeah, he actually does care about Domon a lot, even after everything they've been through.
You know who could definitely be a bit more caring in their current situation?
Oh boy,
Domon, as his anger issues decide to rear up once again, because this gets into what you talked about of the relationship being kind of uncomfortable, where just him being so rude and blowing up in Rain's face over things that were like not really in her control, or not really like anything where like she was able to like given the opportunity to even explain why she wasn't with Allenby when the paramedics took her, because they thought they were that she was taken to a hospital, but she wasn't. Neo Sweden seemed to think so as well, and even Domon's rage gets taken out on one of the scientists as well, who was responsible for the Berserker system in the first place, and is like, bro, I have no idea. Hell, one of our own guys got kidnapped recently too. We don't know where he is. So now Domon is just like, like on top of just being unnecessarily rude to Rain and everyone else like around him in the hospital. He just goes out in a fit looking for Allenby himself, really making it seem like he suddenly cares more about her than he does Rain. Like, yeah, I guess that, like, I wonder what that makes all that, everything from like the last episode we talked about, basically. Like, what did that amount to?
Yeah, like he goes on a full ass rant about to like Raid, like, I thought you were a doctor. Why didn't you go with blood? You know, all of this stiff stuff that's like, okay, you're going. I know you're angry, but you're going a little too far, dude. You're going way too far, actually. Holy shit. I don't know if this is like the worst thing he's said to Rain so far, but it's up there.
I think it feels the worst because of how there was so much progress made at the halfway point of the show. Like, it kind of fits into the idea that, like, as far as, like, plot progressions go, you kind of had to have, like, one last downward turn before everything can finally like fix itself for the good ending.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, there's gonna be like some major consequences for this interaction that are very clear by the end of the episode. But until then, Domon's wandering around Neo Hong Kong, not sure like where Allenby is, still trying to find her. But he ends up finding a horse. We get to see Food Psyche in person as the horse takes Domon to his destination, first on horseback, then they arrive on a boat. The horse stands perfectly still on the boat as it goes automatically to a nearby island, and when Domon gets off, the boat leaves with Food Psyche still standing firm on it. What a brave horse. Surprisingly, it's not the most impressive thing it can do.
Definitely is not, as we'll get to later.
Because right now, we got another confrontation with Domon and Master Asia, this time on foot, showing that yes, we have a lot of cool robot fights, but that doesn't mean you can't have cool human fights as well. Just so much flying and jumping around and punch rushes all over the damn place. It's not the first time in the series, obviously. It happened way, way earlier, but brief as it is, it's still real fun to see it show up.
It is. It's got so much. The fights have so much energy to them. It makes it so fun to watch.
Too bad at least like the fight is interrupted by the emergence of Gundam heads, because Wong clearly is paying attention to Master Asia's every move and being like, oh yeah, if he's not going to cooperate, I'm just going to deal with them right here. They're out of the way. They're not anywhere near the mainland, near the city of Hong Kong. So yeah, just send the Gundam heads after him. He doesn't even know that I'm in control of them yet. Except he kind of suspects as much.
Kind of
really
does. He knows right away. He's like, oh, Wong's doing this.
And so the result of that fight getting interrupted has the two of them trapped in an underground, caved-in, abandoned city on this island. Domon's initial thought is, whatever, I'm just gonna summon the God Gundam to like get into and take care of these Gundam heads before like Master Asia has to remind them, motherfucker, we're underground.
Yeah. What are you doing, you dense motherfucker? We're gonna die. I mean, they probably wouldn't die. They'd live, but that's. I get what he's going.
Yeah. At least do something smaller scale and more controlled, such as the undefeated of the East's ultimate technique, Sekiha Tenkyoken, in which you project a giant open palm fist to break through a goddamn wall.
Oh my god. Yeah, that works too. His leg might be busted, but he can still fire energy blasts from his fists.
Even in the state that they're in, these two people that are clearly antagonistic with each other at this time are forced to make a truce. Basically, they just need to get out of here, deal with the Gundam head, and then they can worry about like going back to like their current feud and like save it for the Gundam fight. Like as they're going through like this underground area that is completely dilapidated. The fact is it's such on an island in such close proximity to Neo Hong Kong, and yet it looks like everywhere else in the world is just all part of a string of like conversations between the two of them, where it is like Master Asia is just being first to immediately address Domon's anger issues. Like the areas in which he is weak, even going back to how like Domon first witnessed the Sekiha Tenkyoken in a moment during his training when he was completely unable to do anything because he was terrified by a pack of wolves. And being shown during this trek how it's like how much the Earth has been ruined outside of Neo Hong Kong because of like the Gundam fight, and how it's like most people don't even realize, not even in Neo Hong Kong, I bet the people that are living in there, they probably are just as carefree and oblivious as the rest of the colonies because of like everything outside of their own little bubble doesn't matter as long as they get to watch their televised Gundam fights. And yeah, all of it shows that there's still a lot of care in Master Asia towards his pupil, as well as like extra depth to the fact that it's like you're seeing more of an understandable, not an excusable reason at least, but understandable as to why he has taken the path that he has, siding with the Devil Gundam and siding with Wong.
Like we keep saying, even with everything surrounding the show, it's still a Gundam show. It still has themes and like a message to tell to people. And it has a very strong environmental message to it as well. That's what makes it special, like we keep saying.
So as they get near the end of this underground section, coming across a dead end, water's rushing in. They're out of time. They both got to make a targeted strike against this wall to break through to the surface. And what better time to break out of the underground with a punch and kick?
Hell yeah.
Without their Gundams, by the way. Pushing a goddamn building out of the ground as one of the best insert songs of the show kicks in. Sento Danji.
Let's go.
A song that is sung entirely in Cantonese, fitting even more with the Hong Kong flavor of the second half of this show.
God, let's fucking go. This is so hype when it happened, too.
Yeah, you all at home are probably hearing the music right now. You bet your ass I'm fucking putting this in post.
Let's fucking go.
They're finally out of there. The Gundam heads are still causing problems, but since they don't have to worry about a cave-in, that means it's now time to pull out the Gundams. Domon does his patented, shouting and finger snap. God Gundam arrives. Master Asia's Gundam arrives as well, along with Food Psyche, in which there is a horse Gundam piloted by a horse and is the steed of Master Gundam. A phrase that G Gundam fans will never shut the fuck up about, but in this context, it's awesome. I allow it in this case. Just be more careful. If you're trying to sell someone on why this show is amazing, maybe point to anything else other than Food Psyche, because that is so overplayed at this point.
It's like, don't mess with us G Gundam fans. We only have two things we tell other people. And one of them is, that horse has a Gundam. It's like, shut up. Just say literally anything else. It's like either that or Windmill Gundam.
But yeah, memes aside, this is at least a way for Master Asia to still be in the fight, even though his leg is injured, because he could just ride on top of Food Psyche's Gundam, as it gallops through the air, has his giant scarf in tow as he is fucking cleaving Gundam heads in half, because that is a sharp ass fucking scarf, let me tell you.
Oh yeah. It can do anything, apparently.
But as this episode reaches its conclusion, this fight, the ultimate purpose of what Master Asia has been doing with challenging Domon here, having to come to a truce, demonstrating the Sekiha Tenkyoken, that part is especially being important because that was the one move, the one technique that Domon was never taught in all of the years that he trained under Master Asia. And after witnessing it again after all this time, and obviously being more proficient as a fighter, least of all as a Gundam fighter, Master Asia straight up encourages him, hey, use this time to try your Sekiha Tenkyoken. Do it this time. And he does it. He actually pulls off a fucking Sekiha Tenkyoken that is scaled up to match the power of it being inside a Gundam. It's not an open palm fist, it's basically more of a Hadouken.
Yes.
But it's still pretty fucking devastating.
It's still good, yeah.
But that's why everything on this island basically ended up happening. Master Asia knows full well that he and Wong are no longer on agreement with where they want the direction of this tournament to go. He still wants to fight Domon at the end, as part of his own plan, whereas Wong wants to focus entirely on Allenby. And Wong's already scheduled Domon's next match to be him versus Schwarzbruder, who is another one of those opponents that even Master Asia knows is close to, is basically about on the same level as him of being undefeated.
Yeah.
So he's I don't want Domon to lose to him. I might as well give him the push he needs to use the final technique of the undefeated of the East, so he will be ready. When you consider his still, at the time considered to be villainous motivation, it's it makes sense that he would do the cliche villain thing of making sure that his opponent is going to be as powerful as can be so that he has the ultimate challenge and satisfaction of beating him at the end.
It's also just a very martial arts thing to do, I feel. Or martial arts movie thing. But yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of martial arts, I even forgot to mention that Undefeated of the East, that title, that also comes from a Hong Kong action movie.
Oh, of course it does. Of course it fucking does.
Yeah. Yeah, like that. The song that plays during this fight in Cantonese, Chow Yun Fat being the inspiration for the prime minister is like, is it any surprise? The only reason they didn't call Wong Chow Yun Fat is like Sunrise knew very clear. It's like, bro, we are not going to have a fucking lawsuit on our hands from this guy. Like, never mind the fact that, actually, I don't know if he would have been on board with the idea of playing a villain in this kind of martial arts story, like a corrupt prime minister of Hong Kong or something like that. But yeah, they were definitely not going to go that fucking far in terms of like, we're just going to use this name without permission.
Yeah, that would have caused some problems, I imagine.
More problems than some of the other crazy ideas that Imagawa was already pushing for. Like, you know, he's still pushing for the whole romance angle to get its big payoff by the end, which is like 10 episodes after this. But until then, oh yeah, Domon, hey, you remember about your outburst at the hospital clearly upsetting a certain person that was close to you? Yeah, she left the team now. Good job, idiot.
Guess your actions have consequences. Oh, well.
Yeah, you really do need to
gotta work.
Be more mindful. Like, it is important, I think, of anyone that like has ever dealt with anger issues or just like or other forms of annoyances that like really get under your skin. It's like, it's good to find like a healthy outlet to like get that energy vented out so that it is not just building up constantly that it eventually explodes inside you, you know? Like proper anger management. It is never right, as demonstrated in this episode, to vent that energy on someone who is unwilling to take it and doesn't deserve to take it.
Yeah, because then you'll just do something you regret, like Domon does.
And it's gonna take some mending in the next couple episodes, considering that, you know, where she decides to go after leaving Neo Japan, like the team for that country is gonna make things extra complicated with Domon's next match. Everything's gonna be a lot more complicated as he needs to mend this relationship while still being sure to make it to the final match where he takes on Master Asia and wins the tournament. It just gets more and more intense as things go on. The show is incredible.
Watch it.
Like everyone that has watched this knows it. Yeah. Like, hopefully just even describing these insane, very separate episodes from like, you know, like as far as like the context surrounding them in their place in the story that we talked about, they're still memorable to us for very good reasons.
Yeah.
And like that enthusiasm definitely, I think, makes for a good case for why, you know, if you're willing to spoil yourselves on these two episodes in particular, that you should go through the rest of it at the beginning and see how it like ties back into those.
You should still watch it, see how it builds up and how it goes from here. It's all worth the journey. Trust us on this one.
Like, I could definitely appreciate having like a very long form like anime series where the whole idea is that it runs for like 49 episodes. You know, like if it's got enough things that are like appealing to me, then that's worth it, just as long as, you know, you pace it out properly. I do at least think that, like, I think in my experience, G Gundam is one of those where it is so entertaining and so engaging, even with its length, that like it's one of those where I think it makes enough sense that if someone feels like that they have to binge through something that they get through, that like G Gundam is like the 149 episode anime where you will feel the least likely to get burned out by it.
Yeah, it still suffers from a bit of some pacing problems, but it's still not as bad as like other 49 episodes. It goes a little more smoothly, like down. It's a little more smooth than a lot of others.
Yeah, there's still the presence of like an ongoing narrative, even though there is generally a quota being met of we have to have a Gundam fight that is like the highlight of the episode because that's what we're here for. But they at least make sure to not fall into the trap of like it being a monster of the week means that we are also falling back into a status quo at the end of an episode and the start of the next.
Yeah, things are progressing one way or another in these episodes most of the time.
Fucking fantastic. Like it's funny every time we finish these episodes and like talking about them, it's like I do want to, like, man, I really do want to find the time that I could just rewatch these in full. And I know with G Gundam, it's like that is such an impossibility with our recording schedule. There's so much time that has to be spent both on editing this and also just watching any of these. But at least with its long runtime, I'm glad that we could find episodes like these where they are isolated enough and have a lot of really standout things that are not super, like, they don't hinge so heavily on needing to, like, see, like, what happened before, like with a lot of other anime where there's, like, very obvious story arcs. Definitely watch it, or watch it again if you already have. It deserves it. I guess in another bit of a tease for what'll be next week, because we are approaching the end of like our anime topics that have to do with our overview episodes. You know, we finished talking about everything we needed to about Mazinger, about Macross, and now Gundam. That leaves only one anime left from one of the other 4 franchises.
Should we tell them, or should we just have it be a surprise? Or do you think they'll know already?
They might know.
Yeah.
It's Gao Gaigar.
It's Gao Gaigar.
Fuck
we're
it.
talking, we're talking about Gao Gaigar. One of our favorite animes. Or one of my favorite animes, at least.
It's a courageous effort, to say the least. So look forward to that next week, everyone.
Yep. And we'll see you all next time. そして振り向かないヒーロー一人じゃないからそのタイム違い合おうきっといつか時代が変わっても僕は忘れない I trust you forever